Here's your wrestling news for April 5th, 2023, and we're starting off today with WWE. And unless you've been living on Mars with your eyes shut and your fingers in your ears, you'll know that WWE has been acquired by Endeavor and that a new company consisting of WWE and UFC will be launched. Endeavor hopes that this new company will launch on the open market within the next 4 to 6 months, as soon as the government approves their merger, but there might be a legal loophole for Ari Emanuel. In a press release, Ademi LLP confirmed that they are investigating WWE's board of directors to see if they're fulfilling their duties to all shareholders by obtaining a fair and reasonable price for WWE. The law firm specializes in shareholder litigation, and their statement comes after reports that WWE insiders will receive substantial benefits as part of change of control arrangements. In the press release, shareholders are encouraged to contact Ademi to provide information for the investigation, information that could seriously halt this deal. As we all saw last year, an investigation into WWE's business practices, and Vince McMahon specifically, can have huge ramifications for the company, and we'll have to see if Ademi are able to make a dent in this merger. Vince McMahon has said that the deal with Endeavor marks a great day for WWE, even if the fans and superstars aren't happy, but Ademi LLP could have the power to spoil McMahon's parade soon enough. As you'd expect, the sale of WWE to Endeavor has had a huge impact on the company's stock, and while many are wary of the deal, the market was very happy. Following WWE's announcement that they were sold to Endeavor, the company's stock rose to its highest point in almost 4 years, closing at $97.23 on Tuesday. This showed a massive increase of $7.93, or 8.88% from the previous closing price, and when you break the numbers down, McMahon earned $198 million in one day from the stock rising. McMahon is now worth $3.1 billion, just slightly less from his all-time high of $3.2 billion in 2019, but if the Endeavor deal indeed goes through, expect these numbers to rise. During this week's Raw, Vince McMahon was once again backstage at the show, marking his second Raw since his retirement, and the chairman was firmly in control during the post-WrestleMania episode of the Red Brand. While WWE has said that Triple H will remain head of WWE's creative, McMahon overruled several of the game's decisions for this week's Raw, which has severely affected the talent. Fightful Select has learned that there was a 6 p.m. talent meeting backstage at Raw, where the roster was once again told that little would change from a TV aspect, but that several changes were made after the meeting. Changes that would have never been made before McMahon's return were back, and that included matches with championship ramifications being cut. Originally, there had been 2 women's triple threat matches, with the winners facing off to determine Bianca Belair's next challenger, but those plans were scrapped in favor of the women's tag title contender match. Fightful reports that several women were frustrated by these adjustments, especially considering the steps WWE has tried to take with its women's division following McMahon's retirement. Staff and talent said that it was demoralizing for this to happen after the most successful WrestleMania of all time, and after months of a McMahon-free WWE, which showed the company could be successful, smooth, and happy. The roster added that this has been the biggest hit to morale since McMahon left WWE last year, and arguably the lowest point of morale since before WrestleMania 38, where it was said to be at an all-time low. After months of positive stories in WWE and the programming showing improvement, McMahon is back and firmly in charge, and nobody in the company is happy about it. Even with everything going on backstage during this week's Raw, WWE filled 3 hours of programming, which included a major heel turn by Brock Lesnar. After being confirmed as Cody Rhodes' tag team partner against Roman Reigns and Solo Sikoa, the Beast annihilated Rhodes in the closing segment of the show, but this plan wasn't a long time in the works. Instead, Sean Ross Sapp revealed that Vince McMahon was the one who made the call for Lesnar and Rhodes to be a team, and he also made the call on Brock's heel turn. He added, "There were backstage elements, including Cody talking on a phone and an LWO Bad Bunny integration that were also changed, but we're not sure if those were Vince McMahon changes. The decision for Brock Lesnar to team with Cody was solidified by Monday morning by McMahon. WWE is going through a big change when it comes to their corporate structure, and that is being reflected by the programming we saw this week. And did you enjoy Brock's heel turn? Let us know in the comments." We've heard a lot about what Vince McMahon cut from this week's show, but there were also examples of McMahon adding segments to the broadcast. Fightful Select reports that the Omos vs. Elias match that fans saw originally wasn't going to happen until McMahon had his way, and that Omos had been sat in catering earlier that day. The Nigerian giant, fresh off his loss to Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania 39, wasn't prepared at all for the match, and there was a scramble backstage to find him something to wrestle in. The report adds that there is an old Vince McMahon rule that all talent bring their gear whether they're booked or not, and that all talent stay until the end of the show, largely because McMahon was constantly changing things. This is exactly why you should always be prepared, especially around Vince McMahon, and it was said the talent were also scrambling to do last-minute reshoots, and that numerous WWE talent were disappointed as they feel like WrestleMania weekend was just a way for Vince to wedge himself back into creative. Only time will tell what Vince McMahon does next, but with the post-WrestleMania edition of SmackDown mere days away, fans have been left dreading what changes he'll make on that show. More from WWE and nixing plans that they had, as at this point, it's incredible that anything makes it onto the show at all. During WrestleMania Sunday, WWE hosted their Women's Showcase Tag Team match, which was won by Ronda Rousey and Shayna Baszler after Rousey forced Shotzi to tap out. It turns out that the submission loss wasn't the only setback for Shotzi, as Fightful notes that originally, WWE had planned for her tank to be used for her entrance. The tank was even on site for WrestleMania, meaning it must have been a late decision for the tank to not be used, and it was also around for this week's Raw. Shotzi Blackheart's tank entrance garners a great response from fans, but it wasn't meant to be at WrestleMania 39, and only time will tell what is planned for her, but it might not include her tank. During Raw, Damage Control's Io Sky and Dakota Kai came up short against Liv Morgan and Raquel Rodriguez, and it was interesting that Bayley wasn't at ringside to cheer on her team. Sean Ross Sapp of Fightful Select reports that at one point Bayley was scheduled to be on the show, and her being cut from the program was described as a last-minute call. There's no confirmed reason as to why Bayley was cut, but the fact that she wasn't mentioned at all by commentary does not bode well for Damage Control. In a tweet, Bayley told fans, "Sometimes the most romantic love story comes to an end, which some have taken as a sign of her exit from WWE, and Dakota Kai's 'I love you' response equally has fans concerned." Bayley has said in the past that she is sure that Damage Control, a stable she had wanted to do for years, would not have happened if Triple H had never become head of WWE Creative. Now the game is still the head of creative, but Vince McMahon holds ultimate power over what makes it to TV, and we'll just have to see what the future holds for Damage Control. But what do you think will happen? Is Bayley truly leaving WWE, and what will happen with Damage Control if she does? Sound off in the comments. Now, in the run-up to WrestleMania 39, there was plenty of speculation over LA Knight, who at times had been pitched as an opponent for Stone Cold Steve Austin, as well as Bobby Lashley. Ultimately, neither of those matches happened, and LA Knight was nowhere to be seen in Los Angeles, but WWE did at one time have plans to use him. According to sources, WWE did have Knight slated for a segment at WrestleMania, and plans weren't changed until the weekend itself. It was not noted what LA Knight was supposed to be doing in this scrapped angle, but it had been reported prior to WrestleMania that he had been pitched for a match with Bobby Lashley. While Lashley did make it onto the show, he didn't have a match and instead merely showed off his Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal trophy on the stage. As you've probably figured out by now, the decision to cut Knight from the show was made by none other than Vince McMahon, as the boss's fingerprints aren't just being felt on WWE's weekly programming. Many fans have feared that Vince McMahon's return to WWE will see a change to the company's creative plans, and that appears to be the case, judging by one video. In fan-recorded footage from Raw, Seth Rollins can be seen being told something during his segment, and it appears that his segment on Raw was changed on the fly. Now, we don't know what exactly was changed about Seth's segment, but given how short his time on Raw was, many believe the duration of his segment for the show was reduced. Last-minute changes were a staple of Vince McMahon's tenure in WWE Creative, including after the show had already started, so Triple H's words about nothing changing are feeling pretty hollow right now. If you've been online at any point in the past 48 hours, you'll know that fans aren't thrilled to see McMahon back, but what do the superstars themselves think? Well, unsurprisingly, the roster aren't thrilled either, as one anonymous superstar told PW Insider that there's been a huge negative shift in morale. The report adds, "Among some talents we spoke with, there was a huge negative shift in morale as they realized that things were going to go back to exactly where they were before Paul Levesque was placed in control as Chief Content Officer. One source said that the place felt nuked, but others didn't go that far. The feeling was that going forward, the likelihood was that McMahon would be overseeing everything again, leaving the creative once again to his whims and sensibilities, although whether that actually plays out remains to be seen. A big part of that feeling of resignation was that Levesque is genuinely liked and trusted by the talents, especially since so many came through the WWE NXT system, and for some of them, that feeling of security many had in the run from SummerSlam to WrestleMania was no longer a given, and would be a far departure from how some we spoke to felt tonight. Right now, it seems that the only person happy to have Vince McMahon back in WWE is Vince McMahon, and the billionaire has proven to be impossible to get rid of, and is staying for the long term. It's clear that WWE superstars are unhappy with Vince McMahon, both how he forced his way back into creative and how he made several changes to this week's Raw. McMahon's constant changes during Raw included providing new production sheets once the show had already started, and all of these changes may be too far for some on the roster. Fightful reports that some WWE superstars, including at least one top superstar, are prepared to request the releases from WWE if this sort of behavior is a trend moving forward. There are multiple wrestlers who are already exploring what their options are in the event that McMahon does remain so involved with creative, something that Vince said he would not do. The report did not disclose which superstars are prepared to ask for the releases, but this could be a very interesting situation, especially if Tony Khan is willing to open his checkbook again. Endeavor's Ari Emanuel has made it clear that he really wanted McMahon to stay with WWE, though it seems he and McMahon are the only ones, and if things don't change fast, WWE could see an exodus of talent. Several superstars are reportedly prepared to walk away from WWE due to Vince McMahon and his controlling nature, but the executive chairman may not give them that opportunity. During Wrestling Observer Radio, Dave Meltzer revealed that while WWE will be owned by Endeavor moving forward, Vince will still have final say when it comes to releases. Meltzer said that Emanuel and those at Endeavor trust McMahon's judgment when it comes to releasing talent, which is something that the vast majority of fans don't trust. This of course means that McMahon will have final say over Triple H, who is WWE's head of creative, despite the game being an instrumental part in bringing in big names, including Dragon Lee. Triple H's tenure as WWE head of talent relations has been marked by the returns of several stars his father-in-law released, including Karrion Kross, Bray Wyatt, Dakota Kai, Emma, Johnny Gargano, and others, but with McMahon back in charge, none of these superstars are safe. Triple H has brought in a lot of names to WWE, but there are some names that the company have reportedly been working on. Kenny Omega has been on WWE's radar for years, and it wasn't too long ago that reports came out revealing that some non-WWE were confident he'd sign once his AEW deal expires. During the latest Wrestling Observer Radio, Meltzer explained that McMahon's return and actions this week may have cost WWE the chance to sign Omega, who will no doubt be reading about how unhappy the WWE roster is. The former AEW World Champion has said that he wants to have fun for the rest of his career, something that would have been a possibility before McMahon's return, but don't expect the cleaner to be WWE bound in the Endeavor era. Now, even before McMahon retired and returned to WWE, fans did not have a favorable opinion on the billionaire, and it's safe to say that the public perception of McMahon has only gone down this week. On Twitter, fans expressed their displeasure for this week's Raw, saying that it sucked, and the blame was placed squarely on WWE's executive chairman. One fan even went as far as to call McMahon a cancer to WWE, echoing words used about CM Punk, and it wasn't long until #FireVince began trending on Twitter. Some pointed out that McMahon has, in effect, gotten away with the alleged sexual assault on women that resulted in his retirement last year, and called out WWE for firing a woman for capitalizing on her own beauty using the hashtag #RehireMandyRhodes. This campaign is unlikely to result in either McMahon being fired or the former NXT Women's Champion being rehired, but unless WWE and Endeavor take some action, they'll just have to get used to this hostile response from fans. During WrestleMania 39, Rey Mysterio and Dominic Mysterio fought in a deeply personal, emotional match, which just so happened to be sponsored by Cinnamon Toast Crunch. Not only did the barricade feature the delicious breakfast cereal, but a Cinnamon Toast Crunch mascot was at ringside, and we now know who was inside the costume. No, it wasn't KSI who played Logan Paul's Prime Energy drink, but on Instagram, NXT's Sol Ruca revealed that she was the one who played the Cinnamon mascot in quite the interesting Mania debut for the young star. And we're ending today with Andrade El Idolo, who hasn't been seen on AEW TV since August due to a torn pectoral. Not long before Andrade disclosed this injury, the former NXT champion had been sent home by Tony Khan for picking a fight with Sammy Guevara backstage and threw some punches at his colleague. This past weekend, Andrade gave an interview with Lucha Libre Online at WrestleCon, and while he confirmed that he is still with AEW, he added that his contract will be expiring soon enough. Andrade also pointed out that he was at WWE's Hall of Fame ceremony with his wife Charlotte Flair and spoke highly of this year's headliner Rey Mysterio, calling him a symbol for all the Latinos. Andrade made his debut in AEW in June 2021, and if his deal is indeed a 2-year deal as rumored, it will only be a couple of months before he's a free agent if a new deal isn't signed. Some have suggested that Andrade, who has expressed frustration with his AEW booking, tried to get himself fired last year by fighting Guevara in order to return to WWE, but we'll just have to see what's next for the former NXT champion.